Closed captioning for Justice and Law Weekly is provided in part by the Clifford Law Offices in support of quality public television for the Chicago area.
Hello, I'm Bob Clifford, President of the Chicago Bar Association. Welcome to another edition of Justice and Law Weekly. My guest today is Steve Patton, Corporation Counsel for the City of Chicago. Steve, welcome, and thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you, Bob. It's my pleasure.
You know, it strikes me that a lot of people have no idea what we mean when we say Corporation Counsel. Who are you and what do you do?
Great question. I've been answering that quite a bit, family and friends. Corporation Counsel is really a combination of the General Counsel to the city, the Chief Legal Officer, and my role is really twofold. One, I'm the Chief Legal Advisor to the Mayor and a Senior Advisor to the Mayor. And then also the head of the city's law department, and we have about 270 lawyers, and we provide legal advice to all of the agencies, commissions, various aspects of the city government.
One of the things that I find interesting about being a general counsel is that there's such an array of topics that you have to deal with, from the very exciting headline-grabbing things that we read about every day to the mundane things of human resources. How do you train yourself as a lawyer to step into a role like that?
Well, I think that the more varied your practice is coming into this job, probably the better off you are, but there's a lot of learning. You know, there's just so many aspects that we touch. You've got to rely on your people too. I mean, there's no way that any corporation counsel or any general counsel for that matter can be a master of all the various topics and issues that come up. And I am blessed with a really, great corporation counsel staff. I've got 16 deputies. We do everything from soup to nuts. As you mentioned, from labor to torts, all the police litigation, all the real estate transactions involving the city, tax issues, code, building violation enforcement. So there's no way I think any one person can have that expertise. You got to rely on good people and hope they're steering you in the right way, and then bone up as you need to on a particular issue to give the mayor or city council or whoever it is that's asking for advice on a particular issue.
Sure. I noticed that every time we see the news and we see the mayor presiding over the city council, the corporate counsel is sitting right next to him.
That's another role.
Yeah.
Parliamentarian.
I was going to say, did you have to learn how to, the Robert's Rule of Order?
Well, actually, it's a little more arcane than that. You have to learn, the council has its own rules and really a very rich tradition. And, it's an important legislative body. And, the irony, that is a part of my job that I probably thought I would enjoy least. And actually, I really have enjoyed it, getting to know the council members and, learning the procedures and so forth. A lot of them really do make sense when you kind of understand the institution, its history, and how it operates. Right. But, yeah.
270 lawyers in the department?
270, give or take. Don't hold me exactly. We are filling vacancies, all the time as they come up. But yeah, 270.
Sure. Well, I know from experience that the lawyers are very well trained. You take continuing legal education pretty seriously.
Very.
I think it's a sad lament sometimes that people read about the bad apples in public service, but I know that there are a lot of good apples, and I know that they're in the law department of the city, that they're service-driven.
Yes.
How do you communicate a message to your legal staff about who they're working for, if you will, and what their job is to, be representative of government in a good way?
I tell you, it's a great question. Directly. On a day-to-day basis, just by leadership, and also in weekly staff meetings, we get together every week with my deputies, and client service. Trying to accomplish our client's goal be service-driven is a key theme of mine, and also in terms of meeting with the entire department. When I first got everybody together a few weeks after I was on the job, it's one of the themes I emphasize. You know, coming from the private sector, as you know, we only get work if we're service-driven. And you're entirely right. One of my great joys when I got on the job was just what a high quality group I had inherited. Right. And of course, we're always striving to make it better. But by and large, our folks are client driven and service oriented, but I want to make it more that way. And the message I'm trying to get across is, and I've said this very explicitly, you know, I'll have your back. If you make a decision and you screw up, okay, I'll understand, I'll defend you. What I won't defend is not making a decision, not taking ownership of a problem. And I think that's, you know, that's wearing off. Or wearing off, or getting across. You know, I want to empower people to make decisions, to do right by clients, and to, you know, address their needs, come up with creative ways, not just say no. You know, lawyers always get a rap, particularly, I mean, you're in a different area of the practice, but when you do advisory work, you get a rap. Jesus, all lawyers do is tell us no. Sure. They tell us what we can't do. What I want to do is make sure people don't get in trouble, but try to help them find a way where they can do it. Right. You know, so it's not just, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's followed up with, but you can do this, or here's an alternative. Have you thought about that? So, and I think by and large we're doing a good job of that, but we can always do better.
Yeah, I know. I don't think I don't know the exact answer to this question, but I know it's going to be, and that is, how many hours a week do you work at what you're doing? or do you really? Are you consider yourself 24/7?
There's a 24/7 element of it. My hours have been very long these first 3 months. I think that, you know, and part of that is there was just a lot of work to do when we came in. You know, I have a great boss who is extraordinarily energetic and enthusiastic, and he's got a lot of things he wants me to do and he wants us to do. So we're working hard. I go in early and I stay late. And the people I work with are surprisingly hardworking. I mean, we've had teams of lawyers working each of the last 4 weekends on a variety of emergency matters that we've had. Mm-hmm. We've had several temporary restraining order suits, many, you know, you've read about in the paper, and we've had teams of lawyers, and these are people that are working at, you know, really a fraction of what they could make in the private sector, and they're committed public servants. They want to get the job done.
Sure. Well, how do you balance the practice, at least the practice of law as I know it, requires just a total immersion and commitment, and yet in the public sector there's a need for people to take furlough days and to manage budgets and cut back. I think I've got to believe that that's a vexing problem for you from an administrative point of view, that you have somebody working on a case and they say, hey, I got to take a couple of days off here to meet the furlough requirements. Tell us about that. Is that still happening?
It's not. It's now ending. Fortunately, but it was a problem. And my personal view, it was a real false economy, at least from what I've seen these furlough days.
Because the mayor ended it. Mayor Emanuel has ended that.
Effective August 1. And you know what that was really tantamount to, apart from the operational inefficiencies that result from that, Bob, and just the you know, the effect it has on morale, it really amounted to about a 9.5% pay cut for our people. And I think this is accurate. My employees, at least the non-unionized employees, our lawyers, have not had a salary increase, I think, in 3 or 4 years. And in addition to that, with the unpaid furlough days and unpaid holidays, it was really, in effect, a 9.5% pay cut for them on a salary that already hadn't grown in several years. So, you know, the mayor, I think, absolutely did the right thing in getting rid of that. Of course, it ended for our union employees effective, I believe it was June 30. It might have been, I think it was June 30. And then the question was, what about the non-union employees? So I think it was the right thing. One of my first days on the job, first couple days on the job, it so happened that the assistants that work for those of us in kind of the senior roles, 2 of them, one was on furlough day one day, and this was literally my first day on the job, and we're kind of trying to get up and running. And then she had a furlough day the second day, and the other assistant had a furlough day on the first day. And so I come into work the second day, okay, well, what about this and what? You know,
right.
We're starting from scratch. So I saw that firsthand, and I think we're going to be better off. We can be more efficient.
Sure,
yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
Is, you know, the mayor, knowing him as I think we in the public know him, he's a tough guy. Have you, and if to the extent that you can tell us, have you ever had an opportunity so far where you had to tell him, you know what, you can't do that?
Yes, yes.
Can you tell us about it?
Well, that's part of my job.
I know.
As I said earlier, it's always nice to say no if you can also, or better if you can say, well, here's an alternative way to do that. And so far we've been pretty successful in finding ways to do that. But he is focused, he's driven, and he's very goal-oriented. Which I think most of us recognize as what we need right now. So what he needs are lawyers that are not just telling him no, trying to find a way to make it happen, and I hope we can do that. We sure as heck are trying. So.
Right. I know we hear a lot of times about the city defending cases, but this city, under your leadership and the mayor's leadership, has decided to use the justice system in a positive way. At least what you hope it will. You'll prevail. Tell us a little bit about that, because you recently filed, again, to the extent that you can talk about these things, you recently filed a lawsuit where you're the plaintiff. You're like doing what I do. You sue people.
Yeah. Well, we're the plaintiff in a number of suits, Bob. Yeah. Wherever we see opportunities to gain revenue, legitimate revenue that our taxpayers are being deprived of or cheated out of, we'll go to the mat for them. And that happened recently, and I think you're referring to the lawsuit we just filed last week against 2 municipalities that are, we believe, diverting sales tax revenues that should go to City of Chicago and Cook County. We'll argue that case out in court, but where we see matters like that where we think we have a legitimate claim as a plaintiff, we will pursue them. And we have probably, and I can't give you a chapter and verse, but probably half a dozen cases that our revenue litigation division is handling right now, Bob, where we are the plaintiff. We're the plaintiff in other kinds of suits. I'm working on a number of matters right now where we're trying to achieve recoveries for taxpayers. An example is, we have a very robust program in Chicago for minority and women-owned businesses. And in the past, one of the criticisms has been that if contractors don't meet those goals, people kind of look the other way. They don't enforce them. And one of the things that we are trying to do is, in a reasonable, good faith way. I mean, it's like any enforcement decision. There's some discretion, but when people have dropped the ball and have not satisfied the commitment, and I'm working on one right now where there was a very substantial failure to satisfy that commitment, we'll pursue it. And the recoveries, and there are penalties in those matters, and the recoveries can be quite substantial. So I'm looking for ways I could bring home plaintiff wins.
There you go.
Yeah. It'll be a small chunk of the $635 million you asked about before, but every little bit helps right now.
Yeah, that's a daunting gap.
It's a big gap, and it's a structural gap.
Yeah, I travel a lot, and people ask me about the mayor, and I say, listen, Chicago, like every other big city, has these enormous budget problems, and if there's anyone that I think I could look to for leadership to try to tackle those things, he's it. But I mean, that is just an enormous amount of money, and I would think that some of are there revenue projections associated with your work that maybe where you can put a dent in that, do you think?
Well, I think every city department, Bob, is being asked to do its share, and mine is no exception. When we took office, the mayor said we're going to cut $75 million right off the bat. And $3 million of that was in my bailiwick in terms of outside counsel costs. And my goal is to achieve much greater savings than that. And we're doing lots of things. 2 examples of what I'm doing in kind of my small neck of the woods to try to, chip away at that structural deficit is, one, we are asking principally the larger firms in town to take on matters pro bono. And that's happened on my watch. There have been 4 matters. And these are matters that in the past are kind of one-of matters, large disputes where They would have been referred out, and in the past we would have paid an hourly fee to folks who handle those cases, and the fees in those matters can sometimes total millions of dollars. New York actually has done this with some success, and I think we can do it with even equal or greater success, is ask some of our corporate citizens, like my old firm. In fact, it's the first. Sure. I knew I would have no credibility, Bob, in asking some of our colleagues at the other major law firms in town to give their pint of blood unless I had gone back to Kirkland first. But we're going back and asking them to take on matters pro bono, and good reception so far.
And well, not only does Kirkland & Ellis, one of the world's largest firm, have a terrific history of contribution. So do you, by way of background. I haven't asked about it, but you've been a leader and on the point for pro bono activity with your work with the Chicago Bar Foundation for many years. Right. And you're continuing to do so, I know, so thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I would actually encourage you to look at whether, and this could be a really good model, whether there are ways that mid and smaller firms could make a contribution.
They can.
I mean, it doesn't have to be a big case, but there are certain things. I mean, we have lawyers at the Chicago Bar Association who volunteer to do pro bono guardian ad litem work for the probate court to help out there.
Absolutely.
And there's an effort afoot that the Supreme Court of Illinois is going to consider to allow third-year law students to participate on the civil side of things, not just through state agencies, Supreme Court Rule 711.
Right.
So it may come to pass that law students at the third-year level and under supervision will be helping the community on the civil side of things, whether it's in housing court, where there's so much going on in bank foreclosures and other things. So you might want to look to ways that.
It's a good suggestion. I tell you, we are not only going to reach out to the larger firms. I want to be cognizant of the fact taking on a major case for Kirkland Ellis or Sidley is one thing. A smaller firm, it's a much greater commitment, but actually so far we've had firms take on 4 pro bono matters, and 2 of those have been smaller firms. So it depends on the matter. Yeah, you know what, Bob, this is a great thing about the city. And actually one thing that I hope, I feel like I can bring to it, because I was in the private sector so long, a lot of these people that are managing these law firms are friends of yours, they're friends of mine. I haven't had a single person I've called say no yet.
Right.
I've had some conflicts, where
they can't take the case because of other representations.
But nobody said no yet. So people are rising. The other thing, back to your question of what am I doing in my bailiwick to cut costs? The other thing we're doing, and this has received some, publicity, at least within the legal community, is bringing back in-house cases that historically the law department handled. Cases that we tried and litigated that over the last few years were sent out for resource reasons, meaning that we had so many unfilled vacancies in the law department. When I started, about 60 from where we were at 3 years ago. We had 300 lawyers in 2007. When I joined, I think we were down to 241. The workload, as you know, hasn't gone down. Number of cases is still the same. And that work was being referred to outside counsel. And when we came on board and did the math, it's easy. I'm no math whiz, but if I can pay, a new lawyer, and a lot of this work can be done by younger lawyers, the kinds of salaries that we pay lawyers, as opposed to paying an outside lawyer up to $295 an hour to do that work for us, we can save taxpayers millions of dollars, and that's where a lot of our savings are going to come in.
I don't think people readily see that, but it is just from my perspective as a private lawyer. I've seen where, whether it's the state, even the federal government, which they seldom do it, but the state or city, when you refer a case out to an outside firm, there are so many more inefficiencies there. It is better to hire a new lawyer. How do you supervise, though, to make sure that the lawyers you're hiring have the skill sets that you want? Because I can also tell you, as a plaintiff, sometimes who've seen lawyers working for government, they're not always the best at what they do. What are you doing about that?
Well, we are our recruiting and our hiring process is extraordinarily detailed. And I tell you, we also benefit from the current legal market, to be candid with you. And it's going to be more challenging when that soft current market, you know, hardens up. But right now, there are a lot of really talented, great credentialed young lawyers out there looking for work. And we do a lot of fun and exciting things. I mean, you know, we handle great cases, and we give lawyers an opportunity to get in the courtroom and try cases, kinds of opportunities you and I had as younger lawyers, right, which we all know are increasingly difficult for larger firms to provide. And you know, when I was in the private sector, we thought we did as good a job and a better job than many firms, and still prided ourselves on being a firm of trial lawyers, and I believe that. But it's more difficult. Our lawyers get trial opportunities in the, you know, in our litigation groups early on. And you know, I'm trying to meet with each of our divisions for a brown bag lunch, and you know, you have a chance to mingle and meet with these lawyers, and you know, it's amazing. You know, they're trying 5, 6, 8 jury cases a year. It's
pretty good for a young lawyer to have the opportunity to do
and they're
that.
not just slip and fall cases. I mean, they're, you know, some of these go for a week or 2 weeks, police, you know, conduct cases and so forth. So that we offer to people. You know, at the end of the day, though, I have to rely on our folks to do a good job interviewing. And of course, I review every hire. You know, I sit down with
every hire.
Every lawyer hire.
Okay.
I personally review and approve, and I'm
great.
going to continue doing that. And when I sit down, I quiz the deputy that's proposing. I look at the resume. I look at the interview forms, and so we're doing everything we can, because if there's a longer-term legacy, you know, all of us are kind of links in the chain and try to make things better. The longer-term legacy that you know, I will leave will be improving the quality of that department. And when I hear some of the stories about the way it was 30, 40 years ago, we had lawyers who had private practices on the side, you know, and they were operating private practices out of City Hall. We've come a long way, and the last administration and my predecessors came a long way in terms of professionalizing, you know, the city law department. But as you point out, you know, we're not perfect, and you know, we've got some high achievers and we've got some not so high achievers, and I'm trying to improve our bench strength and increase the quality every way we can.
You know, included in the interviews we'll be doing will be 1 or 2 with various aldermen to, again, let the community hear from their aldermen what they're up to, and how does the Corp Counsel's office interact, if at all, with an aldermanic office?
Frequently. You know, Bob,
could you tell us about that?
Yeah, they're our clients as well.
Right.
And in fact, well, I was going to give some examples, but we get calls. I was here at Kennedy King College, you know, last evening for an event. And a couple aldermen came up after that event and said, hey, I've got a problem about this or about that. And, you know, we get them to the right people. But we interface a lot. If it's a real estate matter, if it's a vacant and abandoned home in their ward, you know, we have an enforcement group. We help them with that. If they have a street that they either want vacated or rededicated, you know, our real estate folks do that.
How about my potholes?
I can't help you on that. You got to talk to Tommy Byrne and Streets and Sands on that.
There we go.
Yeah, or CDOT.
Is there an organization nationally of corporation counsels where you like compare notes and kick things around for common ideas?
I'm learning, Bob, all of these acronyms. You know, IMLA, which I would have known about 2 months ago, but the International Municipal Lawyers Association, and it's actually a pretty robust association. We're hosting their national meeting in about 2 weeks, September 11th, 12th, and 13th, and we've got 750 corporation counsel from all the major cities and staff members coming into Chicago, and we're hosting that. So,
speaking of groups coming into Chicago, if memory serves me correctly, the G8 is coming to Chicago.
The G8.
What is the G8? The Group of 8.
The Group of 8. It's going to be a big deal for our city.
And it's a big deal for you, I believe.
It's a big deal for us. Yeah, and it's a big deal for lots of people. people. I mean,
But it's a great thing for the city to have that exposure, global exposure.
It's great, and you know, our hope is that we do it well.
Right.
There's a lot of things we can't control about that, but I can tell you the planning has already started.
Right.
The police, the emergency preparedness people, and you know, our department is in the thick of that, and trying to be ready and trying to, you know, make sure that we've done the planning, and you know, we're ready for. There will be demonstrations. There always are.
Sure.
Yeah. So
in every city, it's not
every
just not going to
city.
be just us.
No,
Right.
it's not going to be just us.
In fact, they held the G8 at Glen Eagles Golf Club in Scotland, and there were protests there. So you know, the fact that we catch a few is not going to be extraordinary.
Yeah, but on the plus side, it will be a challenge for, you know, our police and our department and others, but wow, what a great opportunity to showcase the city, and it'll be upon us. You know, I think that's next May or June, and here before we know it. So,
you know what? Speaking of the police, maybe a topic that folks would like to hear about. I know certainly I would. Sometimes we learn in the courtroom things about activities, and you say, you know, if the folks who got us into this mix had known what we now know, it wouldn't have happened. Is there a program in place where you take the lessons from the courtroom and take them to, whether it's the police, the fire, the streets and sand, the staff, to say, listen, this got us jammed up in a lawsuit. If you had only done it a little bit differently, do we pass those lessons on?
Yes, but not as much as I think we should. And one of my key goals coming in was risk management, which is a great term in the private sector, but it's exactly what you're talking about, Bob, and that's a great question. It is, I think we do a pretty good job, our department, in cleaning up messes after they already exist. You know, we litigate them, or we advise people as to how they can avoid exposures and get out of them. But the best thing we can do for the city and taxpayers is avoid that mess from ever arising in the first place. And so we do have a program. We're trying to make it more robust, where we do exactly that, where we take the lessons that we've learned from, say, police litigation. And I would actually like to, and I've actually had some preliminary conversations with Gary McCarthy about this. I'd like to take that back to even the police academy, where our brand new policemen are learning about some of the lessons learned of our more experienced, police, in terms of some of these recurring things that come up that hopefully we can avoid in the future.
That's great. That'd be a wonderful program. Maybe a risk management liaison or officer or something.
Yeah. Well, we have it. I don't want to. You know, I'm learning that a lot of things, you know, we think this is a great idea. It's not like it's totally new, but a lot of times it's something that can be done better. Good. And yeah, we're encouraging our people to do that.
Well, they're giving me the hook pretty soon, but
it's gone quickly, Bob.
It has, and thank you. And I just want to say, on behalf of the Chicago Bar Association, and also myself and my family as a citizen, and the risk of being patronizing, I truly mean this. I don't think people necessarily realize how big of a sacrifice someone in your position makes to be a public servant. You've put aside for the moment a major practice in a major law firm at a senior level, at great sacrifice to you and your family for the betterment of all of us. And I want to personally thank you for doing
Bob,
that.
thank you. It's my pleasure. I view it as a privilege, to tell you the truth. It's really a privilege to represent you and all the rest of the people in Chicago. So I'm trying to do a good job on it.
We need guys like you there.
Thanks, Bob.
This has been a fascinating discussion, at least I hope it has been for you folks. Steve Patton, thank you again for joining me. I'm Bob Clifford. Thank you for watching the Chicago Bar Association's Justice in Law Weekly. See you next time.
Closed captioning for Justice and Law Weekly is provided in part by the Clifford Law Offices in support of quality public television for the Chicago area.